Imagine you just finished reading this really dense, maybe a 20-page industry report in English.
Oh yeah, those can be brutal.
Right. But you understood the nuance, you caught all the subtle arguments, and you're feeling like an absolute genius.
Like you've totally mastered the language.
Exactly. And then maybe 10 minutes later, you walk into a coffee shop and the barista asks you a basic question at full speed.
And your brain just completely short circuits.
It totally does. You just stand there frozen, staring at a menu. You suddenly feel like you can't even read.
I mean, it really is the most universally frustrating experience for anyone learning a second language.
It really is. So, welcome to our deep dive. Today, we are decoding the hidden, unwritten rules of the English language.
And we're pulling from some fantastic expert materials focused specifically on B1 and B2 English listening, as well as professional speaking skills.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this right now, we already know you have the vocabulary. We know you understand the grammar.
Right, you've done the hard work.
You have. So this deep dive is not about textbook rules. It's really about bridging that massive kind of infuriating gap between knowing a language on paper and actually surviving in the messy, fast-paced real world.
Because honestly, the paper version of English and the spoken version of English, they're almost two entirely different operating systems.
Which brings us to what's known as the intermediate listening paradox. It's exactly what happened in that coffee shop.
Right, where you have all the tools, but the second a native speaker talks at a normal conversational pace.
Yeah, all those perfectly memorized words just turn into this blurry, aggressive rush of noise.
Exactly. The real-time comprehension just evaporates, and you're left scanning this wall of sound, desperately looking for, just one word you recognize to cling to.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why does our brain completely freeze up in these moments? And, more importantly, how do we actually retrain it to stop panicking?
Well, to fix a panic, we first have to understand the mechanics of all that noise. What's fascinating here is that the way we are taught language fundamentally conflicts with the biological reality of how humans actually speak.
Wait, how so? Like biologically?
Yeah, so in textbooks, words are treated like neat little islands. They have clear boundaries, right? There is a space before the word and a space after the word.
Right, very clean.
But in real life, spoken English is this fast-flowing river. The words blend, they collide, and honestly, sometimes they just completely disappear. Linguists call this connected speech.
Okay, wait, so when native speakers blur everything together like that, they aren't just taking shortcuts? Because I have to be honest, sometimes it just feels like people are being incredibly lazy with their pronunciation.
I know, it really feels like laziness to the learner. But anatomically, it is highly evolved efficiency.
Efficiency.
Yeah, the human mouth and vocal cords are simply finding the path of least resistance to get a thought across as quickly as possible. The brain basically just wants to save energy.
Okay, I'm gonna need you to prove it. Show me the mechanics of this path of least resistance.
All right, let's look at assimilation. This is where a sound actually physically mutates to match the sound right next to it.
Mutates.
Yeah, say the phrase, 10 points for me, but say it fast, like you're in a rush.
10 points. 10 points. 10 point. Wait.
Notice what your lips just did there.
Yeah, my lips close on the end in 10. I didn't say 10, I said 10. 10 points.
Exactly, because the next word, points, starts with a P. And to make a P sound, your lips have to be closed.
Oh, wow.
So your brain, anticipating that P, forces your mouth to close early during the N. And an N with closed lips sounds exactly like an M. The physical sound literally mutates.
That is wild. I didn't even realize my mouth was doing that. So the N isn't just blending, it's entirely replaced.
It's replaced. And then you have elision, which is when sounds just vanish entirely because they take way too much effort to produce in sequence.
Okay, give me an example of elision.
Try saying fish and chips at full conversational speed.
Fish and chips. Yeah, the D is just completely gone.
Right. To pronounce that D, your tongue has to tap the roof of your mouth and stop the airflow, only to immediately restart it for the chaps in chips.
Which is just too much work for the brain.
Exactly. Your mouth decides it's not worth the microsecond of effort, so it just deletes the D. And then we get to the hardest one for learners to catch, reduction. Specifically, the schwa sound.
Oh man, the dreaded schwa.
The schwa is that lazy, neutral sound. In connected speech, structurally strong words get reduced to almost nothing.
Like what kind of words?
Prepositions, mostly. The word for loses its hard O and turns into a tiny, breathy fur. Tube turns into a quick t.
Right.
So a sentence like, I'm going to the store for an apple, becomes, I'm going to the store for an apple.
It's like learning to drive in an empty parking lot.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like You spend years mastering the steering wheel, the brakes, the mirrors, and then suddenly someone throws you onto a chaotic high-speed highway.
Right. Terrifying.
The car is the exact same car you practiced in, but the environment completely changes the rules of how you operate it.
That is the perfect analogy. You know the vehicle inside and out, but the highway is moving at 70 miles an hour, and, everyone is aggressively merging without using their turn signals.
Exactly. And to you listening right now, if you've ever felt completely lost watching a movie without the subtitles on, this is the exact reason why.
It's not a vocabulary deficit.
No, it is not a lack of intelligence. It's simply that your brain has only been trained to look for islands. It hasn't been trained to decode the river of connected speech.
Precisely. Which brings us to the real work. How do we actually train the brain to hear that river?
Because the natural inclination for a lot of people is just to put an English podcast or the news on in the background while they commute or fold laundry or whatever.
Right, the osmosis method. If I just let the language wash over me long enough, eventually I'll just sort of absorb
This
it.
doesn't work, right?
Not really. I mean, passive listening helps a tiny bit with internalizing the general melody of the language, but it will not solve the paradox.
So what do we do?
To hear the river, you have to engage in active listening. And the best approach from the sources breaks this down into two distinct lenses: intensive listening and extensive listening.
Okay, let's start with intensive listening.
Think of intensive listening as putting the language under a microscope.
Okay, so we are zooming way, way in. What does that actually look like in practice?
It's granular, and frankly, it's exhausting. You take a tiny audio clip, maybe just 60 seconds to 2 minutes long, you hit play, and you try to write down every single word you hear.
Which I assume is basically impossible at first.
Oh, you will fail, of course. You'll pause, rewind, listen again, and finally you check your transcription against the actual official transcript.
And that's where you spot the mutations. That's where you see that what you thought was one weird word was actually 3 words blurred together by assimilation and elision.
Exactly. The sources actually mentioned this student, David. He moved from Seattle to an American university to study biology, and he was completely overwhelmed by his professors.
Because of the technical jargon?
Partly, yeah. But they also spoke incredibly fast, mumbled half the time, and he was just drowning.
So what did he do? Did he just record the lectures and listen on repeat?
He did record them, but he didn't just listen passively. He used the microscope. He would take a 1-minute clip of a particularly confusing explanation. He'd transcribe it, analyze the connected speech, and then he used a technique called shadowing.
Oh, shadowing. It's where you speak over the audio, right? Like you're mimicking them.
Right. You put on headphones, hit play, and you speak out loud at the exact same time as the speaker. You match their pitch, their rhythm, and their reductions perfectly.
So you're forcing your own mouth to make those lazy schwa sounds and drop the consonants.
Exactly. By physically feeling how the words blur together in your own mouth, David's brain learned to recognize those same blurs when he heard them.
I can see how effective that would be for catching technical terms. But doing that for hours? You'd burn out in a week. It requires so much cognitive load.
You absolutely would burn out, which is exactly why you have to balance the microscope with extensive listening.
Okay, so if intensive listening is the microscope,
Extensive listening is the mountain view. You are stepping back to take in the broad landscape.
so zooming out, no transcribing, no pausing every 10 seconds.
Right. This is about building your mental stamina. There's this great example from the sources of a woman named Emily who got obsessed with baking sourdough bread.
Oh, sourdough, the classic hobby.
Oh, yeah. She watched hours of these long, rambling YouTube tutorials in English. Her first loaf came out as dense as a brick. But she kept watching and kept trying.
And the point here isn't her baking skills, it's how she was listening, right?
Right. When Emily was watching a 20-minute video on sourdough, she didn't understand the exact scientific vocabulary the baker used to explain why the yeast fermentation failed.
Sure, all the technical baking jargon.
Right. She didn't know the specific terms for the hydration percentage. And crucially, she didn't stop to look them up.
She just let the unknown words slide past her.
Yes. She just listened for the gist. She caught the main narrative arc. The baker tried, the
Yeah.
dough was too wet, the bread was a rock, and here's what to try next time.
So it's about not getting stuck on the details.
Extensive listening trains your brain to be comfortable with ambiguity. It teaches you not to panic when a word you don't know flies by.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when you combine both of these methods, you get a compounding effect.
You really do.
The microscope teaches you how to decode the physical sounds of the river, but the mountain view builds your listening memory. It builds the stamina you need to stay afloat in a 45-minute meeting without your brain just shutting down from exhaustion.
But of course, once you build that stamina and you can finally ride the river of connected speech without getting exhausted, you immediately hit the next major wall.
Oh, let me guess. You can hear the words perfectly, but you realize they don't mean what the dictionary says they mean.
Exactly. You hit the wall of culture, idioms, and processing speed. It's one thing to decode the phonetic sounds. It is an entirely different beast to decode the cultural context.
Oh man, yeah. I was looking at this case study in the materials about an engineer, Mike. He moved to rural Ireland for a new job.
Right, the Ireland story.
Yeah, and in the engineering meetings, Mike was a rock star. His professional vocabulary was flawless. He understood the schematics, the technical jargon, all of it.
But then 5 p.m. rolled around.
Right. His colleagues took him to the pub, and suddenly he felt like he was on another planet. He couldn't follow a single conversation.
Because the context completely shifted.
Totally.
Yeah.
He actually had to go home and intensely study Irish comedy shows just to figure out what his coworkers were saying. Like, he learned that if someone said the crack was mighty, they weren't talking about structural damage to a building.
Oh my gosh, right.
They meant the party was really fun. And a gas man wasn't a utility worker. It was a guy who told good jokes.
And that just highlights the absolute chaos of English idioms and phrasal verbs. They require immense cultural context.
They really do.
Think about hearing a colleague say, well, they finally pulled the plug on the projects.
Yeah.
If you translate that literally in your head, you're picturing someone yanking a power cord out of a wall.
Or like laid off instead of fired. Or someone saying, I'm going to touch base with you later.
Touch base. It sounds like a bizarre sports ritual, but it just means I'll call you.
And this actually introduces a massive unseen challenge. Because it isn't just about memorizing idioms, it's about the cognitive load required to process them in real time.
Which is incredibly taxing.
Exactly. Which reminds me of Clara in New York City. Her story really isolated this issue for me.
Yeah, Clara's situation is incredibly common for professionals. She understood the words, she had studied the idioms, but her mental RAM was constantly maxed out.
Mental RAM. It's such a visceral way to describe it. It's like her brain was an old computer trying to run too many heavy applications at the exact same time.
Yep.
She was hearing the native speaker, decoding the connected speech, translating the idiom, analyzing the cultural context, and then trying to formulate her own perfectly grammatical response.
And by the time her brain finished buffering and she finally opened her mouth to deliver that perfect sentence,
the conversation had already moved on to 3 different topics. She completely missed her window to speak. Her processing speed just couldn't keep up with real-time dialogue.
So to fix her mental RAM issue, Clara had to bridge the gap from input to output.
How did she do that?
She went back to that shadowing technique we discussed, but she added rapid response drills. She would listen to a 30-second audio clip of a business podcast, instantly pause it, and force herself to summarize the main point out loud in English.
Instantly. Like no writing it down, no planning the grammar in her head.
Just immediate verbal output. I mean, it's messy at first, you make mistakes, but it trains the brain to bypass the slow translation phase and start generating thoughts directly in English.
Which naturally brings us to the output side of this equation, because let's say you've done the drills, your processing speed is up, you're in the boardroom, the mental RAM is clear, and you are finally ready to speak up.
Right, the moment of truth.
How do you ensure that when you do open your mouth, you actually sound like you belong at that table?
Well, this is where we cross from linguistics into the psychology of sounding professional. And the biggest misconception learners have is that sounding professional means using complex, archaic Shakespearean vocabulary.
Which it doesn't.
It doesn't. Sounding polished isn't about harder words, it's about strategic upgrades to the foundational words you already use every day.
You know, I noticed this with the word get. I use get for absolutely everything. I get an email, I get a coffee, I get the point.
We all do it.
But in a formal meeting, relying on get makes you sound a bit juvenile, doesn't it?
It does. It lacks precision. So you make a strategic upgrade. You swap get for receive. Did you receive my email? Instantly, you sound more authoritative.
That's a great swap.
Or instead of asking a client, can you help me with this?
Yeah.
You say, can you assist me? Instead of, I need to ask about the timeline, use, I need to inquire.
Or swapping check for verify. Let me verify those numbers
That
for you.
verify is a powerful one.
It's funny you mentioned sounding authoritative because verify makes me sound like a corporate auditor. It carries so much weight. But, even with the perfect upgraded verb, if I start my sentence with, let me verify that my authority still completely vanishes.
Oh, absolutely. Filler words are the ultimate enemy of professional confidence. The ums, the eras, the likes.
They just ruin it.
When you use them, the listener's brain unconsciously stops focusing on your brilliant idea and starts tracking your hesitation.
The solution always sounds so simple in theory, right? Just pause. Just stop talking instead of saying, But in practice,
It's
if I pause for 3 seconds in the middle of a point, the silence feels deafening. My brain screams that everyone is judging me or they think I've forgotten my own name. It feels incredibly awkward.
And that is the exact psychological trap you have to overcome. To you, the speaker, a 3-second pause feels like an eternity of failure. But to the listener, sitting across the desk from you,
How does it sound to them?
that silence does not sound awkward at all.
Yeah.
It sounds like calculated, deliberate confidence.
Calculated confidence.
Yes, it adds drama and gravity to your words. It signals to the room that you are so comfortable in your expertise that you do not need to rush to fill dead air. You are holding space.
That completely flips the script. The pause is a tool, not a mistake.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've upgraded our verbs. We are weaponizing the confident pause. Let's talk about conflict. What happens when you have to tell a senior manager that their strategy is doomed to fail? Because you can't just pause confidently and say, your idea is terrible.
No, you definitely can't. Especially not in English-speaking workplace cultures like the US or the UK. They heavily rely on indirect communication to preserve harmony.
Right.
Direct confrontation is often viewed as aggressive rather than honest.
It's corporate diplomacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to use what's called the sandwich method, and you rely heavily on softeners. You cushion the blow. Instead of saying, I disagree, you say, I see what you mean, however, or I'm not sure I entirely agree.
That feels much safer.
My personal favorite is, from my perspective, a different approach might yield better results.
It takes all the personal attack out of it. And you apply the same softening to problems too, right? In a corporate environment, you never actually say, we have a massive problem.
Never a problem. A problem is a concern or a challenge. If a deadline is slipping, you say, I have some concerns about the timeline.
Oh, that's good.
It communicates the exact same level of urgency to the team, but without inducing emotional panic.
And this diplomacy extends right into our inboxes too. The unwritten rules of email etiquette are fascinating. Like you start with the mandatory, I hope this email finds you well, to establish warmth.
The classic.
But my absolute favorite takeaway from the sources is the art of saying no. Declining work is so hard, especially in a second language where you don't want to seem uncooperative. But you don't say, I can't do this. You say, unfortunately, I have a prior commitment.
A prior commitment is the ultimate professional shield. It is unquestionable.
Even if that prior commitment is just sitting on my couch watching Netflix, it doesn't matter. Or if a project isn't right for you, you say, I don't believe I'm the best fit for this task, and you suggest someone else. It establishes your boundaries firmly, but politely.
And all of these tactical tweaks we've discussed, the upgraded verbs, holding the confident pause, using softeners in conflict, they all build toward one monumental psychological shift.
Which is?
It's arguably the most important adjustment anyone can make in a professional setting, whether you are speaking your first language or your fifth.
So what does this all mean? When we strip away the linguistics and the corporate jargon, what is the ultimate core of projecting confidence?
It's conquering the urge to over-apologize.
This is huge.
We all have this reflex, especially when we feel insecure about our accent or our processing speed, to constantly say sorry. Sorry I'm late. Sorry my English is bad. Sorry to bother you with this question.
We do it all the time.
The most powerful mindset hack you can implement tomorrow is to swap every apology for gratitude.
So instead of walking into a room and saying, sorry, I'm late, you say, thank you for waiting.
Yes. And instead of rambling and saying, sorry, I'm taking so long to explain this, sorry, my English isn't great.
You pause and you say, thank you for bearing with me.
Exactly.
But wait, let me push back on this just a little bit. If I show up 20 minutes late to a crucial board meeting and I strut in and just say, thank you for waiting, doesn't that come off as a little arrogant? Like I'm ignoring the inconvenience I caused?
It's all about the delivery. You aren't strutting in arrogantly. You are delivering it with genuine sincerity. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the power dynamic. When you apologize profusely, you are shining a massive spotlight on your own flaw.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You're putting yourself in a deficit, basically begging the room for forgiveness.
You're starting from a position of weakness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you say thank you for waiting, you are shining the spotlight on them. You are praising their patience. You are complimenting their character.
Oh, wow.
It shifts the energy from your failure to their grace. And fundamentally, leaders express gratitude. They don't grovel over minor inconveniences.
That is profound. It completely changes the energy of the interaction. And look, sometimes the pressure just gets to you. Sometimes you're in the meeting, the mental RAM completely crashes, and you just lose a word. You freeze.
It happens to everyone.
The instinct is to panic and apologize. Don't. There is a perfect professional escape clause for this. You just smile, hold your ground, and say, the word escapes me right now, and you move on to the next thought.
Because it's not a big deal.
Exactly. Sitting in a boardroom, navigating complex business strategies in a language you were not born speaking, that is not a deficit. That is a superpower.
It absolutely is a superpower. It requires immense cognitive agility.
Oh, what a journey this deep dive has been. We started by shattering the illusion of textbook English, diving into the chaotic, fast-flowing river of connected speech, watching how words mutate and vanish through assimilation and elision.
It's a messy river.
It is.
Yeah.
And we learned that to survive that river, we have to practice active listening. We zoom in with the exhausting, intensive microscope to learn the physical sounds, and we zoom out with the extensive mountain view to build our stamina and tolerate ambiguity.
We tackled the heavy cognitive load of idioms and cleared our mental RAM with those rapid response drills.
And finally, we decoded the psychology of the workplace. Upgrading our basic verbs, weaponizing the awkward pause, softening our conflicts with the sandwich method, and making that incredible power-shifting transition from sorry to thank you.
It is a complete transformation from a passive language learner to an active, commanding communicator. And it leaves you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over today.
Let's hear it.
Think about the mechanics of what we just discussed. Swapping apologies for gratitude. Softening a direct disagreement with, from my perspective, weaponizing silence. This raises a really important question.
Okay.
When you master these unwritten professional rules in a second language, are you just translating your native thoughts into English? Or are you actually adopting a slightly different, perhaps more assertive workplace personality than you have in your native tongue?
Oh, that's fascinating.
Does learning a new language with its own specific cultural codes of confidence actually give you permission to invent a brand new, more polished version of yourself?
A new language as a blank canvas for a new you. I love that. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take these insights, embrace the confident pause, remember your superpower, and try bringing that brand new workplace personality into your very next conversation. We will see you next time.